very bad conditions and from different parts of Greece.
I have counted like how many articles within the Declaration refer to indigenous languages and culture, and goes from the beginning: the right to a nationality, the right not to be forced into assimilation, the right to belong to an indigenous community, connection to the land, and the right to practice and revitalize our cultures, establishing education and institutions. It's those kinds of things that we need for reconciliation. Not these token little words that we hear about how important languages and culture is, and then we talk about economic development. Well, we cannot have economic development flourishing without the flourishing of our own identity, those pillars of our identity that helped our ancestors resist and become resilient in the face of a genocidal oppression. And it was genocide. The Indian residential school was plain and simple genocide.
We have to know who we are, and that's one of the reasons that we cannot move forward.
They've never acknowledged me, only that they rejected me.
Yesterday's injustices are manifested in today's inequalities.
I grew up in a generation where that was not taught. We were not taught this as part of our Canadian history.
Sometimes we don't have occasions to meet together as different communities, people from different cultural backgrounds.
I am not white, and I got nothing to do with this. I'm just a third party.
There's a rawness, and there's a truthfulness, and there's anger.
Always longing to be someone else, well-liked, respected, and well-adjusted.
And so we face this discrimination, and hostility, and hatred, and judgment sometimes from non-Aboriginal adults. But what they don't know is that their children are growing up behind them and picking up and learning those same attitudes.
I have the great fortune of spending part of my time as an educator. One of the courses I teach is on reconciliation, and we go through, you can see the class go through these different stages. One of disbelief, that how could this have happened in Canada? And me being a smart young person, didn't know about it. How could this have happened? I don't believe it happened. And then anger. Anger that it did happen, and that they didn't know about it. Why didn't they learn about this in elementary school or secondary school or post-secondary school or in their churches or from their parents or from their families? And then some acceptance that, yeah, it did happen. And secondly from that, and we need to do something about it.
My attention was not so much towards commissioner statements. My focus was on this couple of lady who was sitting on the above third floor. Who sort of silently weeping, and I'm sure she heard the stories, she heard the statements. They just kept crying. And I almost felt their pain.
It was a very mixed experience. I think there was a lot of sorrow, but interestingly, the parts that, you shed tears when you're listening to the stories of survivors, but in that report, I shed tears in the hopefulness of it. That we're moving forward, and it's not an easy process, nor is it supposed to be, but it's in the struggle together that we learn to see each other. And the idea that we need to be led in that we need to listen to Indigenous folks to see our role in that, to be welcomed into this walk for reconciliation, into this dialogue, and in doing so reclaim ourselves.
A relief. I think it was a relief to hear some formal sort of, I don't want to use the word closure because I know it's not over, but coming to some conclusions about what needs to change for reconciliation to happen, for right relationships to be restored or to begin to be restored in Canada. A recognition that these voices have been heard, finally, after long years, that these voices have been heard and that they're not going to go away. And so that's important, really important.
It was important, and it was powerful, and it's a challenge for Canada and for our government, because there is a thorough report and there are many recommendations that are important and will take commitment to follow through on. And I think that it will be easier for the public, and it'll be harder for everyone to ignore the issues and the lack of commitment by our government and our institutions, because how thorough the recommendations are. If the government does not follow through, it'll be very clear for the public.
I heard them say over and over again, this changes everything. And I don't think they say that in a naive way. They don't think that tomorrow the government is going to just, pick up on all these recommendations and put them in place. But it changes everything for them. And I think we as a church have a special responsibility to live into this reconciliation. The stories have been told. Truth has been spoken, and apologies have been made on our behalf by Mennonite Church Canada and by the Canadian Council of Churches. And there are these commitments that have been made on our behalf, and I really think it's up to all of us within the churches to know what those apologies were and what the commitments are.
I was in a room upstairs in the hotel with a large group of survivors and others when they gave the report, and then you could hear through the screen, but also through the hotel, the drumming start in the lobby of the hotel, and it was just like, wow, there's like this energy, and so I think there's a sense of anticipation as this mixed group of Canadians, like, here we go, like some people said like now's the beginning. There's a real sense of like we've planned and prepared for this report to be finished, and now let's get to work.